This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA as we near closer to NBA All-Star Weekend. And after the dust is settled, trade deadline arms race is complete. New teams in new places, but still making their mark, man. And certainly making both conferences very interesting, must-watch TV. We saw some awesome primetime games over the weekend. Man, let me tell you, it's about to get hot and heavy as we start nearing the stretch a little bit closer towards playoff time. Let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, 50 grand, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. What's good in your neck of the woods?
Well, just like you, my dude, getting ready for NBA All-Star Weekend. Can't wait for the Baseline boys to make their triumphant return, this time headed out to the Charlotte area. But as always, we got to give a salute to all the fans listeners of NBA Baseline. I think it's going to be an amazing show. Got a good friend of ours, coming on here a little bit apart for the drop topic. And, I think it's going to be some amazing content as always on our show, bro.
Absolutely, man. My man Shaw always bringing in the heavy hitters. And no better is somebody that has their hands not just on the inner workings of the NBA. They're actually making the inner workings of the NBA turn, but they're also a primary component to helping these boys get paid. We have sports agent Matt Slan on board, my man Shaw, with an awesome one-on-one interview on behalf of the Baseline NBA podcast, man. It's a must hear. So we definitely have that ready for the drop. But in a moment, we're going to dig in on absolutely one of the most feared teams in the NBA. And I don't mean that because they got a hashtag fear the deer. No, the way that they are playing right now warrants conversation. We will be talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and why I'm telling you, this is a team that you cannot sleep on, even if you are the Golden State Warriors, and you'll find out in a little bit. So great show on tap. Once again, we always appreciate you and yours for listening into the Baseline NBA podcast. As always, we ask you to hop on board with us, ride with your partners here. Get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. We ask you to download that platform that you're used to, throw on your headphones, allow us to be your go-to resource, discussing all things happening in the association. For all our Dash radio listeners, you know where to find us Tuesday mornings, 9 a.m. We like to be your morning ride to get you live for the NBA, so be sure to catch us on Dash Radio. You know how we do. You know how we roll. Let's get it started with the breakdown.
Time to break it down.
To the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Callie Warrenshaw, the Baseline NBA podcast. And our main topic for the breakdown, it's that uncanny team that rolls up in the cheese state, Milwaukee. That's right, man. Last time we talked about Milwaukee being relevant in the conversation of the NBA, I think they had a, Hall of Fame-like kind of player. You know what I'm saying? Regular people call him Lou Alcindor, but his superhero name was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's just remarkable how far we have to go back to talk about the great days of Milwaukee Bucks basketball. But in 2019, if you would have asked Giannis Antetokounmpo and his boys, they would almost talk to you as if they decided to travel back in time and bridge the gap between those great years of Milwaukee Bucks basketball to what you're seeing right now under the coaching of Mike Budenholzer. This is a Milwaukee Bucks team that became the first team at 40 wins in the NBA, where most people thought that really should be the Golden State Warriors in their sleep. The Milwaukee Bucks are already putting the rest of the NBA on notice, Shaw, and it just cannot be overlooked. That it's not the fact that we're looking at this team as being a fluke. I think that we actually have to start recognizing the way that they play right now could actually be a matchup problem, not just for teams in the Eastern Conference, but maybe even to a team like the Golden State Warriors as well.
Yeah, they have really taken a big stride over now that Coach Bud has joined them. And it was just, a little over a year ago when the Bucks fired Jason Kidd. And we were kind of wondering and saying, all right, well, what's going to happen here with Giannis? Will he respond in a positive way to get this team to the kind of proverbial next level. And they still had a very good playoff run, although they got bounced in the first round, if you will. But took Boston to 7 games, and it looked like a team that was on the verge, but just had something missing. And a lot of that was due to Eric Bledsoe not being able to play his proverbial part. I think Chris Middleton played well in that series, but Coach Bud has kind of really changed things now overall. I mean, if you search Milwaukee's statistics kind of all the way through, they don't really do anything poorly. The thing that they're worst at right now is offensive rebounding, but everything else, they're somewhere in the middle or in the top 10. And that is truly the sign of a team that needs to be recognized. Now, again, first year, Coach Bud's got to get them into the playoffs, and we got to see them have some playoff success. But why we're bringing them up now is that, hey, well, I think the league is starting to become on notice, and I don't think this is going to be a fluke situation. This is a team that nobody's going to want a part of, because more often than not, Milwaukee's going to have the best player on the floor on Giannis Antetokounmpo. And then you have guys like Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe all playing their part. Malcolm Brogdon having a great season as well. Just picked up Nikola Mirotic at the trade deadline. Ersan Ilyasova, who was a great buyout candidate from Philadelphia last year, comes back to Milwaukee. He's playing his spot minutes and doing his thing. And Coach Bud has this whole roster contributing across the board. And I think it's time now, as we alluded to, like I said, to really pay attention to what Milwaukee's doing. And I think the rest of the Eastern Conference knows, because this is a team first in the Eastern Conference to get to 40 wins, and I don't think there's any sign of them slowing down anytime soon.
So this is a team last year, Shaw, that accumulated 44 wins. And as we're recording this podcast, they're already at 41. So I just think it's a foregone conclusion that they're totally going to eclipse their win totals from last year. And there's still like another 20, like 30 something games still remaining in the season, right? So that already tells me that by leaps and bounds, this is a basketball team that is in sync with what they expect themselves to do once they get into the playoffs. Like, normally at this time of the year, Shaw, a lot of teams, even when they make deadline trades, when they make these type of moves, a lot of it is to put them like in that realm of, we're taking this seriously because we want to be in the playoffs. The Milwaukee Bucks made moves to say we want to be in the finals. And I think that says a lot about the mentality that they are taking on, which I really think has been motivated by what you see from Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's interesting. We were trying to measure Giannis on a year-by-year basis simply because everything that has come from him since he started in the NBA has been purely on the raw talent ability. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just don't sometimes when you watch superhero, movies, they always have to go back to when the kid, didn't realize he had these phenomenal powers. Everybody sees he has these phenomenal powers. They just don't know, what it's going to take in order to bring it out. And then he has to have one of those Last Dragon moments. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it clicks and he finds it. And then he's damn near unstoppable. He's almost invincible. And what you're seeing right now with Giannis is he has found some form of invincibility in how he sees himself, how he sees what he can do for his basketball team. And I think it's infectious. Infectious in a way that even the organization are making transactions that are bold and brazen to put everyone else on notice that you should start taking the Milwaukee Bucks seriously. Previously, before Shaw, if the Milwaukee Bucks made any kind of moves, like the Eric Bledsoe move, that was one of those, like, we're here, we're Milwaukee, we want to be in the playoffs, but that wasn't like a bold move, right? Like, it wasn't saying that the Milwaukee Bucks are trying to take steps forward because they believe in Giannis and they believe in this trio of Middleton and Parker and everything like that. They're saying we just want to be viable so that we don't lose fans, so we don't lose the enthusiasm that we have a good basketball team. They get rid of Kidd, they get Budenholzer, then they get rid of Parker. And then they start doing all of these other things. And then you see Giannis take this next step. And I think it's reversal. Usually organizations make moves to help kind of bring the team together or kind of bring people together to buy into the culture. Now you see them kind of feeding off of Giannis and how he is determined to put the NBA on notice about what he is and where he wants to be. And I think that that is permeated through everybody in that team. And if you're Nikola Mirotic, who's now just walking into this, he himself might even think that he is the last Jedi. He is the last piece that might help put them into the conference finals conversation.
Yeah, I think even one of his first interviews state pretty much just that. Hey, I go from a team struggling and with all kinds of internal strife now to a team that's the best in the Eastern Conference with a real chance to make the NBA Finals. And you have to credit, the Milwaukee front office team, if you will. Um, John Horst and those guys, they really saw that they had an opportunity. They believed in this roster, made a couple smart moves and tweaks. Again, I think we talked about it a little bit over the course of the season here, even acquiring George Hill and what that meant for them as well, too, giving them some depth at the guard position, at both guard positions. And as we said on the trade deadline show, that this is a team that really everybody can just slot down and play multiple positions, and because of the length and even just the basketball IQ that is on this, that kind of permeates throughout this roster. Um, and you look at them and you're just like, damn, they saw it. They knew that just because, let's say, they saw Boston, Cleveland battling the NBA Finals, well, they knew they took Boston to a Game 7, and it really could have gone either way. And they realized that maybe Boston wasn't as good as people were hyping them up to be. Couldn't have predicted what Toronto was going to do with Kawhi, but that didn't matter to them. They're like, you know what? We see a real opportunity for us. And now, how do we get to the next level? And again, you have to credit Coach Bud for what he did, but not forget what John Horst has done as an executive as well too. And it really has all come together. Both sides of the basketball. And like I said before, this team is damn downright scary. I don't know anybody who really wants a piece of this team going into the playoffs.
So one of the things that I looked at with this team this year in comparison to last year, and look, I don't know if the whole situation when Bledsoe and Terry Rozier were, going at it, and basically Rozier ghosted Bledsoe, wearing the Drew Bledsoe jersey and things of that nature. I don't know if it made Eric Bledsoe feel some kind of way, but the air and we may have touched on this a little bit in a previous podcast, but Eric Bledsoe this year, man, I got to tell you, he has totally resurrected his respectability as a guard in this league. Now, I'm not saying that he's catapulted himself as being one of the top guards, but he is playing as if he really has a chip on his shoulder and he has something to prove. And the last time I recall seeing this kind of play from Eric Bledsoe, he was a Los Angeles Clipper. So to see, given what he's gone through as a player, where, he's been traded around, he's not really been taken seriously. Here's an opportunity where, without saying that he is the key to why they are as successful, because everybody knows that this is all really through what Giannis is doing. Okay. He is opening up everything for everyone. But there is an aggressiveness to Eric Bledsoe that we haven't even seen when he was playing in Los Angeles, that he somehow is now ingratiated within his mantra of how he goes out and plays the game. And it really raises a bigger question that I'm going to ask you in a little bit, Shaw. But I first want to get your perspective about how Eric Bledsoe is playing, what he's doing this year that you think is really elevated him to being as successful as someone that we didn't see from last season.
Well, I think first and foremost, he just understands what he means to the team, and Coach Bud has given him clear guidance on what his role is supposed to be. Being acquired in the middle of the season last year, or whatever, a quarter of the way into the season last year, it took him some time to kind of figure it out, and he had some ups and downs, and I think it's the first time really that he played competitive playoff basketball, especially in the role that he was elevated and expected to perform within. Now he's seen it. He realizes that he's taking the blame for allowing Terry Rozier, in essence, to kind of get the best of him. And I think under Coach Bud's tutelage, he realizes, hey, this is a golden opportunity. We have a special team here, and I've got to do my damn part. He doesn't want to be the guy that's holding them back, and this is just one of those rare instances where everything is clicking for Milwaukee. Everybody's playing, at a great level, and the fact that it's his contract here doesn't hurt as well, too. So players always
Always
get that
about them
little extra
contracts,
boost,
man. Always about them contracts.
that little extra things become so much clearer, when you don't have a guaranteed deal for the next season. So all of those things I think have played in the run. And I don't want to sell him short and say, oh, it's just a money issue. He understands the game. He understands the schemes that he's supposed to be running. He's attacking a lot more and not afraid. I mean, he's never been afraid of contact. I mean, look at the guy. He's a specimen physically, but he's just making the right decisions. And his jumpers is done pretty well as well too this year too. So he's shooting three, and that's the other thing too. That's the biggest thing Coach Bud has got this team to do. Is shooting the three and shooting the three and is at a high rate. So, Bledsoe is really a huge key to them. And the fact that they have really at any time, especially when they're starting, four guys who can create Bledsoe, Middleton, and Giannis, all four of those guys can create shots for others. And I think Bledsoe just believes in everything that Coach Bud has been telling.
Most definitely. You're tuned to the Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw, discussing hot button topics of the NBA. We are discussing the Milwaukee Bucks. What makes them tick? Why should they be feared? So, the one thing that I was really curious, Shaw, do you think that because of what we're seeing from this Milwaukee Bucks team, that it's going to elevate the conversation about how important Giannis Antetokounmpo is to a basketball team than, say, a person like Anthony Davis, right? Because here's something that's interesting to me. The Milwaukee Bucks, they get Nikola Mirotic, and Nikola Mirotic is going to come in, and I really think he's going to help this basketball team. They're gonna be able to shoot the basketball even more than they were shooting it before. Okay, everyone has been really dogged in their perspective of how important it was for maybe whoever, the Lakers, the Celtics, whomever, to get Anthony Davis. And again, I lean to the idea that Davis is an all-world talent. He's a great player. I'm wondering though, if you had to tell me who may win an NBA championship first, and you had to pick between Giannis and or Anthony Davis, who would you choose, Shaw? When you see the demeanor, the attitude, the takeoff for what we're seeing from Giannis, regardless if he wins MVP or he doesn't, just by what you see from this year, who do you think is projected to probably win an NBA championship first?
Well, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, with this situation, and the mere fact that Davis is going to change teams, this summer, most likely end up being in LA. I guess there's still the potential of Boston, as we've alluded to. Um, I just feel like right now, from what we've seen, Giannis is leaps and bounds better when it comes to that, I guess, characteristic, so to speak, or those miscellaneous aspects, those intangibles. Giannis statistically can match up with AD, but I think there's a leadership quality that is there with Giannis and kind of what the organization, and maybe you can't fault Anthony Davis for this, but what the organization has built around him. Davis is still is comparable on every other metric and statistic that you can think of. And he can shoot better than Giannis can. He does where Giannis can create for himself and dribble. Davis has the ability to shoot the basketball a little bit better, and Davis can even handle a little bit as well too. And does a great job blocking shots and steals and rebounds, points, everything. They're both complete players, but Davis actually can just shoot the basketball more. So if you were leaning towards the overall skill set, you'd say just basketball, it's Davis, but Giannis has that intangible, like I said, of being a leader and having a good organization that's actually building around him the right way. Again, prisoner of the moment be damned. Giannis is in a much better position to succeed from a championship standpoint than Anthony Davis is right now. Of course, AD can go to LA this summer and they can surround him with LeBron and whoever else, and then he's right there with the. They also have to get past Golden State as well Milwaukee at some point in conference as well too, because Philadelphia looks very scary after some stuff we've seen this weekend as well. But to answer your question point blank, Giannis is in a better position now to be an NBA champion before Anthony Davis is.
Isn't it kind of frightening though that if we everybody was very quick to pair up this idea that, oh, LeBron needs to have Anthony Davis, and Anthony Davis with LeBron, there's no question you have to put them in the conversation, winning the championship. I guess in my head the way I'm looking at it is, what are we talking about with the generation that's going to pick up when LeBron walks away? Right? Like the guys that are true catalysts to galvanize, to have a team that they can elevate, to a championship level. And I often say to myself that there are guys that win MVPs because of the individual numbers that they can post that are impressive, right? And then there are guys that those numbers really translate into how much they're asking the rest of the team to step up and do more if they want to win a championship for. And I just feel like when it comes to those type of numbers, that right now Giannis Antetokounmpo is balancing it out a lot more efficiently than what I think you see from Anthony Davis. And then you start wondering, well, what are the intangibles that make other people believe that Giannis Antetokounmpo should be in that conversation? Because again, I go back to what I was saying earlier before, the raw talent factor would tell me that this thing should be happening in steps. Like maybe in another 2, 3 years, we're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo being at that level that we thought that Anthony Davis would already be at. And I'm not trying to diminish anything from Anthony Davis. I'm just saying that if Anthony Davis has to pair up with a guy like LeBron James in order to probably win a championship, and who knows how LeBron sees Anthony, like if he's just going to hand the keys over to him like Dwayne Wade handed the keys over to LeBron to help him win his first championship. I'm just saying that it could minimize the way that we perceived Anthony Davis and his ability to lead teams to win championships differently, in the same way that we're talking about how Giannis is going to be able to, lead the Chris Middletons, the Malcolm Brogdons, the Nikola Miritiches, should they find themselves playing for an NBA championship.
Well, that's 100% the narrative. 100%. I think if you decide that you need to go join up with another next level superstar, then it kind of diminishes, what you've done in order to get there. And it's not knocking Anthony Davis because he wants to leave New Orleans. It's probably knocking him so much that because he appears to be hell bent on wanting to play with LeBron and whatever final years LeBron has, and then trying to make a run in that way. And again, it's just kind of the old school versus new school mentality. And we don't need to get into that kind of that debate, so to speak. But it is just seen optically better because hey, Giannis is willing to do it right now within his own team. If other guy has to come to him, well then so be it. But it's always different when you're the guy that leaves a situation to go join another situation. It just doesn't make the same. And I think the only person that's recently got away with it, where it was like, hey, it was fine, was KG. And that's because of all the years of quote unquote loyalty he showed to Minnesota, where they weren't doing necessarily the right thing. Anthony Davis is very much in the same situation where, hey, they weren't doing the right thing, but he's played it wrong, from in the court of public opinion. So he's not going to get the same, kind of bow from the media that KG got when this whole thing goes down. Especially if it ends up being in LA. I'd be interested to see if it ends up being Boston or some other team. Who knows that could probably throw their name into the hat situation, and then he gets traded there. Then does that change? But right now, if Anthony Davis goes to LA and they eventually get to the finals and eventually win an NBA championship, while he'll be fine, he'll probably end up taking the KD approach and calling the media snakes and the whole nine. He will still have his ring, but I think it's going to be a little less. There's a little less to it than as opposed to if Milwaukee, and if Giannis never wins one, as a result of his loyalty to Milwaukee.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. And real when you look at how they're built, how they're structured right now, who could literally be their biggest threat to impede their ability to represent the Eastern Conference in an
Well,
NBA Finals bid.
I'm again prisoner of the moment. Um, I look at the team that just made all the moves that they did in Philadelphia because to beat Milwaukee, you need to be able to challenge them at every level of their defense because they have so much length and because they have so much switchability. Right now, Philadelphia is best prepared in order to do so. We still need to see what Toronto is going to be able to do with the addition of Marc Gasol. Boston has played them, I think, well once, but for the most part, they ended up getting blown out the other couple of times that they've matched up, and that they don't give me cause, to believe that they're going to be able to do anything against a Milwaukee team. So the way that Philadelphia has now constructed their team, I really do feel like that's the one. Milwaukee's 3-1. Their season series is over with Toronto. As you know, it's done. We won't see Toronto again, so they won't have a pre-matchup now that they've gotten Marc Gasol. But we may see. I think they have one more game against Philly, so that'll be interesting to watch how those two teams, kind of they match up. And they're 1-1. They're 1-0 against Philly right now. So yeah, they should have a couple more games before the season is out. So to me, Philadelphia, because they can attack you from all angles I mean, they look very scary themselves right now in the East.
Are you buying in the confidence of Philadelphia because of the fact that they have a formidable starting four? Um, and it really is going to come down to Brett Brown and Budenholzer who makes the necessary adjustments, or will it come down to maybe the depth of the benches when it comes to those two teams?
Well, Milwaukee has the advantage of just continuity, having been together for the majority of the season. Philadelphia is like kind of sum of parts right now that is going to be trying to figure it out as we go. But one of the things that I always look at when it comes to comparing these teams is, yeah, you want to go fully in depth. You look at coaching. Okay, coaching is about equal. You can say, okay, who is the best player on the floor at all times? Most people would probably be honest, but it's not that far when you put Embiid into that conversation. And then I look, okay, well, who has the second best player on the floor? And then I think that is Philadelphia, because Milwaukee's second best player is Bledsoe. Is it Middleton? Who do you really like? Who do most people think that is? I believe it's Middleton, but Bledsoe's played very well this season, as we just talked about. I think with Philly, you could say it's Simmons, and I'll take Simmons over Middleton. I'll take Simmons over Bledsoe, or you could say it's Jimmy Butler. All both of those guys, and then you throw in a guy like Tobias Harris as well too now, um, who ironically played in Milwaukee for a little while as well too. That's where you start to say, like, Philadelphia has some separation when it comes to their second and third guys compared to Milwaukee's second and third guys. With Giannis not being, even if you're taking Giannis number one overall, he's not that much better than Joel Embiid is when it comes to like what he's bringing to the team and to the roster. So that's why I really give Philly the nod. And while we keep talking about buyout season is going to unveil itself to some degree and bring some other parts into this. Right now, their starting five is hella good. And they did some things to help their bench as well too. And I think they're going to give Milwaukee all the fight they can have. And I cannot wait to see when these two match up, even here in the regular season. See so if we can get like a little bit of a playoff preview with those two teams.
If you had to put money on who would come up clutch between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks, um, between say Giannis and Embiid, who are you looking to step up big come playoff time between those two guys?
I mean, they both have to bring it. I feel like Giannis is less susceptible to being rattled in the situation. Embiid, he still has some maturity issues where I feel like if he doesn't feel like he's getting enough touches, if he doesn't feel
He
like,
plays too much.
yeah,
he just he plays too
he
much.
rises his emotions, and
Right.
as a result of Philadelphia's overall talent in their starting lineup, that does cause for some jockeying and positioning sometimes. Whereas Milwaukee, there's no doubt who it is. Like they know, all right, give the ball to Giannis, and let's just do what we need to do around him. And I think in Philadelphia, there's tendencies at times where they might not give Joel enough touches, or they don't involve him enough. He can go 5, 6 straight possessions without even touching the ball, even if it's just to pass it back out, because they have so much overall talent on that team right now. And again, we're still talking about it as Harris has played 2, 3 games with them so far right now. So that's where I'd say it's going to be Giannis, who I trust to be the most stable in that situation. And I feel like they may have a slight advantage just by virtue of the continuity, but Philadelphia is really, really good. They may need to be our next breakdown topic as well after they've made all these trades.
Milwaukee Bucks, winners of their last 8 of their last 10 games. They're a team with at least close to a +10 in differential, 23-5 at home, 18-9. I'm sure it's just like franchise best, record so far this year. And we're not even completely done with this season. The Milwaukee Bucks is certainly a force to reckon with, and it can only get better for them should they decide to get a couple more pieces due to the buyout market. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. This was The Breakdown.
Time now for the drop. I'm doing a little solo drop right now. My man Cal Lee indisposed at the moment, but I'm here with a good friend of mine, actually, somebody I met, summer league, I don't even know how many years ago, just kind of sitting in the stands as both kind of getting our careers off. He's a lot more accomplished than I am. But this is my guy, Matt Slan from Slan Sports Management. Matt, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for having me on, Warren. And I don't know if I'm more accomplished than you, my man. You've done a great job, so congrats to you.
Well, listen, we're, for our fans and listeners out there, again, Matt is the president and CEO of Slan Sports Management, basically an agency that, that works with a lot of players overseas, male and female, has some people in the U.S. as well, too. But we want to do our drop topic here a little bit, just kind of showing people kind of the other side of what's going on, what it means, to be in this position. And we'll ask Matt a couple different questions. So the trade deadline just happened in the NBA, so that's some stuff that, while he's not intimately involved in that, I think he can provide some perspective. So I think it's going to be a great show. And again, Matt, we really appreciate you jumping in here, man, and giving us some of your time here.
Absolutely. Let's roll.
So just for our listeners, tell us a little bit about just how you got started, kind of to, your quote unquote, we'll say humble beginnings, and kind of how you became the president and CEO of Slan Sports Management.
Sure. Well, it goes back about 8-9 years now. And, I really started my company after working for my basketball teams in college and then working for Canada Basketball a year post college. And I really just talked to a lot of people, professional basketball players who were having issues with agencies, with their agents, not calling them back, not having a strategic plan for them, and basically not communicating with them was really the main problem that I sussed out of talking to so many athletes. And it was always a business that I really wanted to get into since my athletic career declined at post 15 years old, like many
so many of us.
Yeah, exactly. We all kind of dream of being a professional athlete, and then when it doesn't happen, I was kind of one of those people that thought that, I really wanted to get into this business, and I was looking for exactly how I was going to do that. And all these things kind of started to click after talking to a lot of players, and I really found that the niche that I was going to fill in the market was an agent who communicated with players, who strategized for them, put together plans, executed for them those plans, and then really was basically trying to get results for them and being honest with them. And it was very simple core values that allowed me to grow the business to where it is today. And we have about 30 male clients and about 20 female clients playing in over 25 countries around the world.
It's outstanding. We're here again with Matt Slan from Slan Sports Management. You can follow him on Twitter at Slan Sports. Matt, so was the goal, I think, especially in the time that we're in right now, to make sure that we have kind of gender equity, so to speak. So was your goal always to work with both the male and female populations when it came to basketball?
Yeah, well, I've always kind of been a proponent of the women's basketball game. My mother was the one who taught me how to shoot a basketball and go off the left foot when you're doing a right-handed layup when I was very young. And I was actually a very good basketball player for that brief amount of time in my childhood, believe it or not. But so the women's game was something that just always, I saw that there was a need there. And, I've always kind of championed women's athletics. And I have my vice president, Jason Ronsley, who actually runs our women's division right now while I handle the men's. And but I, oversee a lot of that as well. And it's a thriving game. And I think that, what a lot of people forget is that there's a lot of women who are playing professionally and have that opportunity to play professionally across the globe.
So let's get into that a little bit there, especially when you're talking about being across the globe. Obviously, in the North American culture, if you will, the goal is, we always want to get the NBA or the WNBA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that goal or dream isn't realistic for everybody. Just like us, as teenagers, where even making to the next level of professional basketball or even playing in college, like we have to realize, hey, that's not our calling at a pretty smart age or whatever. How do you, in essence, as a guy now who's looking to be somebody's representative, so to speak, do you have that conversation, or do you have to have that conversation with certain people, certain guys, certain ladies who may feel like, oh, well, it's NBA or WNBA or bust for me. Like, this is where I'm trying to go to reel them back in and realize exactly what you said, that they can have a very great, long-lasting, lucrative career overseas.
Yeah, and look, every player on my roster wants to play in the NBA, and every young man who's playing at the collegiate level wants to play in the NBA. Our goal is to help them strategize on the way to get there, walk them through the steps of what that looks like, whether it's, the NBA pre-draft process, NBA Summer League, what that looks like, and what their chances are. And we just want to be really realistic with people, because those opportunities are harder than they once were, tougher to come across. And the goal and the most important thing that we tell our clients, and we make sure that our clients are on the same page as us, is with that this is a process. This doesn't all, it's basketball and the journey of being a professional basketball player is much like life. If you look to chew everything in one bite, you can get overwhelmed and you can choke. And we want to show you how to take smaller bites, put one foot in front of the other, and build towards that. And if you're deserving of that, it's going to come through your as the client's on-court ability, and through our pushing you to those opportunities.
So that obviously makes a lot of sense. I think, especially if you can sit somebody down, and again, I think it's interesting because you're in a position where you want to paint the best picture for that person as potentially as you can, right? You're still running a business as well, and you have to kind of balance that, that delicacy, if you will, so to speak, of, hey, whatever, I still want to represent you, but I want to represent you with a certain level of integrity, right? And if that's what you're saying, like that's what's really working for you, that's how you've kind of built your client base. Because we've all seen, all types of sports movies, and those, Jerry Maguire and all the other things like that too, where agents get a bad rap. You know what I mean? How do you, in essence, again, how are you breaking the mold of that, so to speak, with some of your clients?
Yeah, and you bring up a really, really good point, and that's expectations. And while everybody aspires to play in the NBA, as we just discussed, making sure that we're on the same wavelength as our clients in terms of how we're going to go about that process is paramount. We want to, we go through an extensive market analysis of what players have done on the court, what their future looks like. And if they want to get to point C, how do we walk them through A and B, make them understand what their goals are, what our goals are, what their job is, what our job is. And so once we really verbalize that and communicate that and put a good plan onto paper and then look to execute, we can really we can work together, hold each other accountable on what the path is that's going to get them playing at the highest level, and whether that's the NBA or overseas. That's on both parties to really accomplish together. And we look at it like, it's a lot of teamwork, and like, a big theme that we've talked about here today, and I guess a big theme of my business is communicating with players. And yes, if there's a player that says, I want to get to the NBA right out of the gate, and it's NBA or nothing, and that's not something that I foresee for this particular player, maybe it doesn't work for us to represent them. And we've been there, and that's okay. This is about finding relationships, matching expectations, and how we walk through the process together, because we put a lot of work and effort behind our players in marketing, with talking to executives, with getting videos together and player profiles and market analysis, and a lot of these things that come together. We have to be on the same page as our clients. I'm very lucky to say that I've got a great group of clients that I work with who are phenomenal guys, both on court, off court. And it's really something that's humbled me. And every day these are the type of people that I jump out of bed and am excited to get to work for.
We're again here with Matt Slan from Slan Sports Management, President and CEO. Again, follow him on Twitter at Slan Sports. So, Matt, what you alluded to just a couple seconds here ago kind of reminds me of a long way of even in some ways how we first met. Again, just kind of in the gym, watching games for hours on end. And I don't know if people understand like that part of what it's like to be you or to be an agent in general. Like there's actually a lot of scouting involved. It's not just representation and contracts and getting endorsement deals. It's like you're almost in some ways a scout yourself, trying to see how players play, but also then in essence kind of determine, all right, is it a good fit for your agency? From a personality standpoint, talk a little bit about that. Is that something that's underrepresented or underreported in terms of like how much work you guys have to do on the back end?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the truth is, I think that a lot of I can't speak for all agencies, but I know that there are agents out there that just strictly look at numbers and and really superficial type of information, which guilty as charged for myself. And when I was beginning my career, I didn't put as much emphasis into the scouting aspect as I have over the last 5 to 6 years. But the more that I immersed myself into the industry and the more that I would talk to scouts, executive, general managers, I realized that, there was a lot more that I needed to delve into in order to do a few things: understand the market that I am selling my players to, and to understand my clients, and their games and the intricacies of their games and what they do well and what they don't do well, because these are conversations that I have with them. And, over the last 5, 6 years, I've really, I believe, taken my both basketball and athletic knowledge base to a different level because of the amount of basketball I watch. I joke with my wife when we're sitting around at the end of the night and there's a for her random college basketball game on, and I say I have to watch this game, and she thinks that I'm watching it for pleasure, but the truth is I'm watching it for work. And what basketball has become to me is a job, and it's I'll get back to the point that I was on, but I want to make a very important point to anybody listening to this right now, and that's that I meet young men and women every single day that say, I love sports and I'd love to get into the industry because I love sports so much. And what I think is my truth, and I'm not saying this is everybody's truth, but my truth is this, that I watch so much basketball now, it's become work. And it is work every time that I'm watching basketball. I'm thinking, what sets are people running? How a 6'8" power forward is getting the job done as opposed to a 6'10" power forward. Who's his agent? What was his career path like to get to the point that he's at? This is just a couple of very small points of the bigger picture of things that I'm thinking about every single time I watch any level of basketball game. And then we get to this is not just watching NBA basketball. This is watching European basketball. This is watching collegiate basketball. And I'm not just talking Division I basketball. I'm talking Division II basketball, Canadian University basketball for listeners. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. This is it's a very basketball, as everyone knows, is such a global game now, and it's diversified so much over the last 10, 20, 30 years since, before the 92 Dream Team. It's diversified. So I'm always watching European basketball at all levels, college basketball, NBA basketball, and everything in between to grow my knowledge base, do better for my clientele, and really understand the market and look for things that I may not know at one time, and really continue to build my knowledge base.
Very well said, Matt. So it brings me to, again, another question in terms of, as a result of you watching that much basketball, as you alluded to, all at all levels, how much traveling now do you end up having to do, especially with having, I guess what you said is like almost 50 total clients or over 50 clients between the male and female populations. How much are you spending time with those individuals, whether that be here overseas or when they come back? Like, kind of what is your responsibility to be present physically with some of them?
Yeah, being present is a big part of it. And whether it's a trip in the summer to see a client or getting overseas once or twice a year to see clients and to see GMs and executives and continue building that relationship, there's nothing more important than being present personally. And I've been lucky to have the opportunity to really get to know some of my clients, when we're in Germany or in Italy, a nice dinner, a nice beer, with a client. There's nothing better than that. And really getting to know people, and it helps you build that rapport. It helps you build a relationship, and it helps build a level of trust. That's always important in any relationship.
Man, you're really dropping some nuggets here, man. And like I said, I feel like we could talk for hours about this industry, so many things that are going on. I do have a couple more, though, that I feel like I kind of have to get in. So one, I'll relate this to, again, some of our younger listeners, the 2K19 generation. 2K19 starts with you, with your my player actually playing overseas, I believe in China, and, not really understanding the language, but just the language of basketball is that all your player needs to understand, but the coach doesn't really speak English to him and things of that nature. What do you feel like your level of responsibility is like to learn some of these other languages, since you have players representation in, you said over 25 countries, and then even still like instilling that on your clients as well too. Like, hey, if you're going to Germany, you're going to Italy, learn the language. Like, kind of talk about that a little bit as well.
Sure. And a really, really, really good point. Not to deep, we could go on a lot of different levels there, but I think my job starts, I'll get the first part out of the way. I don't speak any other language other than English, which has not been a detriment thus far, but it's something that I think about every day. Darn, I wish I kept taking French and Spanish throughout high school, so that I had a better ability to communicate with certain people. But I'm really fortunate. I got to say, I work in a lot of countries directly with teams that I've built great relationships with that speak the language, our language, English, incredibly well. Countries like Germany, Belgium, France, those are easier to work in. Countries, the Netherlands, because everybody speaks English for the most part. Now, when you get into Spain and Italy and Hungary and countries like that, less people speak English and at a level that would allow us to communicate. So I'm very lucky that I have some wonderful partners who I work with on the ground in those places who are able to communicate what the teams are basically, what their needs are, what they would like to communicate with our players, and when a deal actually happens, it's basically being the deal is being helped by and supported by my partners on the ground in those countries who speak perfect English and obviously speak their native tongue perfectly as well. And so, that aside, my job when it starts with a player is to prepare them for the culture that they're walking into. So we want to make sure that when a player is going to Europe, okay, when we're taking, a young man from Ohio and putting him in Germany for the first time, his first time out of the United States, well, what are some things that a young man who's never been overseas wouldn't know? And one of the first most simple talking points that's really important is, did you know when you're overseas, you can't plug your computer in with the plug that you have? And they go, no, I had no idea. It's a good thing you told me that, Matt. And the reason is because they have a 2-prong outlet over there. So, and that's not even in all European countries. I believe Israel has a different plug. So we make sure that they get something as simple and mundane as getting an adapter computer, for your cell phone, so you can plug multiple things in. You know, just to give you an idea of the vast amount of small items that go into consideration when you're helping young men travel across the world, is something that we think about and something that we help our athletes. We prepare them to understand what those cultural differences are. And then when you get the plugs, you talk about other things. You talk about, okay, look, when you go over there, let's take Germany, for instance, and you're one of 2 or 3 Americans on your team. And this is something that I learned from, being in the business for almost 9 years, is teams don't love when the Americans or Canadians stick to themselves. What they like to see is players acclimate themselves into the culture. If you're always with the other 2 Americans and you're not talking to the German guys, it doesn't say anything about you, but the teams want you to develop yourself and culture yourself and just really throw yourself into their culture. And so we make sure clients know that end of the spectrum as well. And so as you can see, from plugs to perception by teams of players, there's a lot in the middle there that goes into preparing young men to go to a different place, away from home, away from what they're used to, away from their wheelhouse, into a different place, not just to live, but now we're asking them to perform at their peak athletically. So in order to do that, my job as the agent is to support them in as many ways as possible to get them ready off the court so that they can get there, hit the ground running, and fire on all cylinders.
It's a lot. It definitely seems like it's no small task, and having the knowledge that you have, I mean, it's something, even as just as a person who like to travel, not playing ball, or like you said, not having those added pressure. I think I was on a cruise ship that was technically a European cruise ship. I was making an American tour. And exactly that. I think I went to plug in my clippers and I was like, what the hell is this? And I was stuck. So I had to just rough it, for the duration of that time. So all those small things matter. I've already determined, through the conversation here that, we're gonna have to bring you back on for a part 2, man, because there's just too much good stuff that's going on here. So final ones before we let you get out of here. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this. So right now, March Madness is coming up, so it's going to be obviously a busy time for you, as you start to prepare for that as well. But we just passed the NBA trade deadline, and I'm interested to know, and I think our fans would listen to know, what is the rumor mill like out, in a country like Hungary or, anywhere overseas? I know it can't be quite as vicious as it is here, where people are hanging on to players every single word like they are like a Kevin Durant. But with the rumors and things of that nature, with some of your guys, and do they get involved in that? And, just talk a little bit about what that situation is. And then from you, may have to kind of manage the situation from thousands of miles away. Like, all right, well, they got my guy, in this rumor. Is this happening? Is he going to get traded? Talk a little bit about that. That is what that's like for you from the overseas market.
Yeah. So the overseas market is kind of its own beast. It's a little bit of the Wild West. So it's a lot less. It's a lot less structured. So what you guys should really understand is that every country has its own domestic basketball league. And therefore, while they are all FIBA-governed leagues, they are also run domestically. So they run on FIBA rules, but the independent, each specific respective country runs on their own set of rules. So from imports, some countries have 2 import players, meaning an American or a Canadian, and others have 5 or 6. And so their deadlines in each country are different. So, more so overseas, what you're dealing with is a player can be basically cut at any time, even on a guaranteed contract. Teams make moves that don't always, as any fan listening to this can attest to, you don't always understand the reasoning behind why your team traded a certain player, signed a certain player, picked up a certain player off of waivers, whatever it is. So basically overseas, a couple weeks ago, I had a client who was doing very well, and the team decided to release him, and we had to react very fast to that. While the player is overseas, we want to make sure that we market him. If we know that the team's going to release him, we get in touch with other countries, our partners, teams directly, and we say, hey, we've got this player at this position available. Are you going to be making any moves? Are you switching up? We're looking for other weaknesses in the market. We're looking for opportunities for our player that we can kind of transfer them from their current situation where they're being released to another situation. The pressure is so immense on these young men that you're not a real basketball player until you got into a point where you're at a level that you're challenging yourself and that a team cut you because, for whatever reason it is. That's what, and that's, not directly answering your question, but that's when an agent's job starts. And I really believe that our work, when an agent is a good agent, not when things are great, but when the times get tough, and how they're there for you and how they support you and how they execute for you during the tough times. And so when you talk about a trade deadline in the NBA, you've got players, on flights the day they're traded to their new city. They've got to move their family. They've got to potentially sell a house. They have to potentially start renting a condo or a house. They have to get acclimated to their new environment. There's a lot of movement around trade deadline, obviously, and as an agent, our job is to make that process as smooth as possible, alleviate as many worries and issues as we can for our clients, and again, just allow them to do what they do best, and that's play basketball.
Extremely, extremely well said. I think this has been a life lesson, I think, in what it means to work in basketball, on the other side of things that, people like you don't often get to tell your story, I think, and really and share that with fans and listeners, especially, some of the more common fans, listeners. I want to thank you so much, Matt. And as alluded to, man, we'll definitely have to have you back on because there's so much. We're just scratching the surface. So, you know what, we may need a Matt Slan series or something like that as well, too, because there's so much good information here dropped on us, man. So thank you again for spending part of your day. I know you had a birthday recently. Happy belated birthday as well. And thank you so much for your time, Matt, today.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate it very much, Warren. Anytime for you.
Absolutely. You're tuned to the Baseline NBA podcast, and this is The Drop.
Awesome show, Shaw, man. What a phenomenal interview that you had with your man, Matt Slan. So much insight, bro. Sounds like, you guys might be gearing up to make this like a series like Netflix, man. What's up with that?
Well, I don't know if we have the millions of dollars that a guy like Matt would require. I mean, he's such a good dude, man. But yeah, man, we talked about the Slan Sports series, coming to the Baseline NBA podcast. We get him back on and get some of his clients on as well, too, man. It was an amazing show. And just a great content behind the scenes stuff that I think not a lot of fans and listeners get an opportunity to really hear. And you heard it from the horse's mouth. While he's not working directly in the NBA on a regular basis, he's watching the league and he's working in basketball. That's what our show is about. It's about basketball, not just the NBA. And I think just understanding what's going on in the overseas markets and how he's working with clients with a true level of integrity, that's important to know. So I'm glad we got to highlight one of the good guys in the industry.
Most definitely. For the Baseline, my man, you already got me on my flight, man. I haven't even finished up this show. For the Baseline, Kylie, Warren Shaw, special shout out to our man, Matt Slan. We appreciate each and every single one of you guys. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.